Hello everyone, this is update for February 10, 2023. Also catch up for February 9, and it's day 352 of the war and of the date of date. So let's discuss a little bit sort of general strategic situation, and I haven't touched on what's going on in Asia Pacific, and there are more developments there, and I think it's important to discuss those. So the first one is Russia clearly indicated to Japan there will be no peace negotiation talks anymore. The topic is closed. Just for those who don't know, since World War II, they don't have any peace treaty. Soviet Union never had with Japan, and then Russia inherited that. So there's no peace treaty, just a ceasefire essentially. And Japan wants some of their, I think, four islands, um, Kuril Islands. Russia doesn't want to give. Before the war started, it was kind of like going or in the direction that Russian political leadership was kind of giving a signs that they're willing to give those islands back to Japan. And now, since the whole situation with the war, it's very clear that Japan is part of the West, so there is no point, and Russia was now clear it's not gonna give anything, and there is no point of these negotiations. So this is honestly not a big news. Just want to kind of give you that, like, okay, this happened. There is very clear sort of how to say, everybody understands who his enemy is, and there is no ambiguity there. Let's put it this way. Then there are a bunch of news. Oh, and then Japan related. Sorry, before I jump to China, there's also Japan related. Another news is Japan signed a treaty with Philippines that allows essentially, or let's say how to say word. It's a treaty about that Japan can help, and it's um, emergency response teams can come to Philippines during natural disasters, kind of like that. But the point of this agreement is the first step. In probably the next agreement will be that it allows Japanese military basically to enter Philippines. So as you can see, there's clear preparation for potential military conflict there. And as I said to one of the viewers, who believe is in partial in Philippines, is that Philippines is going to be battlefield along with Taiwan, obviously. Um, but Taiwan might be lost pretty quickly um, if there's a conflict with China. So similar to like where fighting is going on in Ukraine, so the Philippines may turn into Ukraine of the Asia Pacific. So then another news is that Chinese Minister of Defense declined talks with the U.S. when U.S. reached out to discuss this whole story about the balloon. So and then um, another sort of U.S. sanctions, I think some more six Chinese companies and so on. So the and then the representative minister of affairs of China said that if you heard this. Sorry, I'm gonna step back a little bit. So you heard about this investigation by the journalist, and I would say in quotes journalist, because people who do this kind of publish this kind of stuff, they never journalists. They work for intelligence agencies. Just don't fool yourself that this is a journalist, and because okay, if you want to go try to do some research like that, you will realize it's not possible. Just if you wanna, if you this is a very simple test for you to know if this is something real or not. go try to do yourself. If you see like you cannot do it, you just then you realize that this is not real, that you basically presented something that's something else. But anyways, so and I don't know who this so-called journalist works for. Could be that he's working for multiple intelligence agencies at the same time, and sometimes this does not end up well for this kind of people, because one intelligence gets upset, and sometimes they uh, eliminate those people. But the point is that there is this so-called investigation or um, information there that claims that the U.S. With Norway blew up Nord Stream 1, 2, and so on. So that was published, and then Chinese Minister of Foreign Affairs then uses this as opportunity to attack. And what they say is, okay, if this is true, then U.S. should be held responsible. They should not just walk away like just as if nothing passed, and they should pay for that basically. So this is, as you can see, this is not like a normal diplomatic conversation. This is especially not normal for China, where everything is not direct. Everything is super indirect. Let's put this way. So, as you can see, there is uh, definitely intensifying or spiraling level of like tit for tat. I hit you this way, I get you higher response. So far we see clear escalation. Then there was another interesting news which I mentioned before, which supports one of the ideas that I mentioned before, where the I think deputy of the Taiwanese party Gomindan went to meet with some higher up, also probably deputy. I don't remember exactly position, but basically kind of like a deputy in Chinese Communist Party, and where they basically met and came to agreement that that there shouldn't that Taiwan should not be independent, should be essentially part of China. The part of China wasn't said, but you know the way it's worded is basically that's the logical conclusion out of it. So this is, and why I'm saying this, because Gamindan is there sort of one of the two parties, and there's presidential elections coming up in 2024 in Taiwan, and if everything goes the way it goes, the Gamindan may win those elections, and then, as I said before, essentially China, I'd say, took over Taiwan without any fight. So, and that's a real possibility. So we'll see, or at least um, um, there's another sort of layer of problem is that uh, members of Gamindan, a lot of them are part of the Taiwanese military, and they clearly will not fight if, let's say, there is a Chinese invasion. So so you can see that there is, I don't know if it's half of the country, I don't know exact sort of I would say split there, but significant portion. Let's say 40% of the country, and that's enough. That's more than enough not to be successful in self-defense of the country. And to be fair, if the half of the country doesn't want to be independent and they see themselves as a part of China, that's the choice, and that's what they want to do. So the solution for this only can be found on the battlefield for this kind of situation. That's why you have civil wars, because you really cannot resolve this problem by discussion, because people just want to go, two people, one wants to go left, another one wants to go right, and there is no solution between those two, like peaceful solution. And that's unfortunate, but that's just reality of life. And the irony of all of this is actually that Gamindan was actually fighting communists in China in 40s, and obviously lost that fight, and they actually created Taiwan as we know it, not this progressive democratic party, which basically was created uh, later to run the country, but it actually was created by Gamindan, and um, it's very interesting dynamic, I would say, and um, there's something that needs to be really paid attention to. Let's put it this way. Um, so that's that's sort of kind of like discussion about what's going on in Asia Pacific or China, and basically, oh, and then let's move actually to Russian energy. So there are reports that there is another pipeline was connected Russia and um, China, which will add another 10 billion cubic meters of natural gas to China. So the total probably at this point is going to be like 30 plus minus, which does not sort of compensate losses to Europe that Gazprom lost in Europe by any means. And also, it's much, much, much worse from a perspective of the price because China pays, very low prices. Chinese are generally very shrewd business people and probably one of the best ones in the world. So if you having a deal with Chinese, you probably on the losing end. Let's put it this way. And so Russia is basically I wouldn't call it subsidizing China, but essentially not gaining there anything. So all of the value add is probably pocketed by the Chinese in that situation. But at this time, in a way, Gazprom is extremely desperate because they don't have outlet for their natural gas to Europe. Their LNG fleet or capacity is extremely limited. It's just very small, and they don't have access to Western technology for LNG, so they will not be able to quickly rebuild that. So they basically blocked, right? And also Russian fertilizers, which is another way to export natural gas, also blocked essentially. So, and there is another problem is that natural gas wells that you cannot just like plug a hole. It's extremely difficult to shut them down and close and stop production. And Russia does not have uh, many storage facility or large number of large storage facilities. They used to be in Ukraine, in Western Ukraine, in this here in this area. This is where the Soviet Union, the whole system of the Soviet Union was working in a way that the storage was in Ukraine. So they lost access to that storage. So basically, you really cannot plug those wells, or really extremely hard. You could have very easily disasters there, natural disasters trying to plug them to stop the production. And sometimes, by the way, it's so bad that sometimes they basically, I think one of the wells they had to blow nuclear, um, not I guess you can call it warhead, to shut it down. So it can get really bad because you cannot extinguish it very easily. So it's really dangerous. So they are in this super difficult situation with this natural gas, and we'll see how it all sort of kind of gets resolved. But situation is very combustive there. Then, in terms of Russian crude oil, you probably heard that Russia announced that they will cut their production by uh, 500,000 barrels per day. So they were used to produce, let's say, 11, so now it's 10.5. OPEC said that they will not increase production to take, to compensate for zero point 0.5, which is, I would say, no surprise to anyone, given that you probably, if you've watched, I mentioned that Chinese president, Chinese leadership went to Persian Gulf to those producers, had conversation with them, probably discussed potential sort of, how to say, military guarantees that nothing is going to happen to Saudi Arabia and all those countries, and there is generally hostility between current U.S. ruling party and let's say Saudi Arabia and all of those Persian Gulf countries, because they see the world very differently, and probably also Europe as well. So, in other words, I would say all of these Persian Gulf's oil and gas producing countries are essentially acquired, I'd say, partners of Russia and China. There is only one problem is Iran, because they are at odds with Iran, which they see is as existential threat there. And that's the only thing that where sort of there is no perfect alliance. But otherwise, there is complete agreement, and maybe there is also sort of, I would say, um, offers from China and Russia that they will control Iran to make sure he's not gonna expand any further in the region. Um, so that's the situation with the crude oil. This also means, which is very logical, right? Russia, anyways, does not get enough technology, or whatever they had in terms of inventory is getting used up, and so they're not able to maintain everything, all of these wells, especially much more difficult ones. And so the crude oil production will decline naturally, anyways. So, and also, if you remove that, you probably will gain, because today the price of crude went up on the global markets. So, in other words, this is sort of natural path for Russia, and this is probably not the last uh, self-imposed. I would say it's not truly self-imposed, but like sort of self-initiated decline in production. They probably, if you remember, I said that one of the one of the better um, Russian sort of experts or no, entrepreneurs, I would say, in oil and gas industry, he said that at the beginning, actually, of the war in April, he said the most logical is to reduce production to 7, 8 million barrels per day for Russia, and that will yield the same financial results. So you basically, it's very logical, and he's being kind of like vindicated now, and he actually retired at this point. But essentially, that's where it's all going. That probably will Russia eventually will reduce its production to 7 million barrels per day, which will essentially keep the prices for crude and derivatives or products of the processing pretty high, and we may see increase in all of that coming into this sort of summer season in the northern hemisphere, which is where there is a peak demand. So we may see that the price for gasoline, diesel starts to go up again. Well, it that is also, we'll see, depends on how. So that is also there's not like single determined by just what I said. There's also U.S. Federal Reserves or other central banks that are increasing interest rates. They keep pushing, and that may sort of balance or offset this declines in oil production. So remains to be seen. But the end result is it's not going to be sort of positive balance for everyone. So it's going to be a very painful balance for everyone, because, in other words, either oil is going to be very expensive, you cannot afford it, or you're not going to have money, and it's going to be cheap, but you still cannot afford it. So basically, this is kind of like where everything goes, one of these two passes. But the both passes are bad for the consumer, for the average person, let's say in the West. So no matter how, it's just two different roads to achieve the same end result, basically. Um, then now let's actually switch. Oh, and then also one other country I want to mention is Belarus. So they actually mm, started calling, you know, uh, people for military, for like training, kind of like 1 month's training, military training. That's obviously is not good sign either. It's just that's what happens in preparation of the war, and it could be stealth mobilization happening there as well. So, but as I said, the quality and desire, fighting spirit of the Belarus army is just not there. But you never know. Maybe they will be sort of mixed with the Russian units, and they will be basically used as reserve to refill Russian units because at this point it's one military system. So remains to be seen. But that's just um, you know another negative development. That's all I can say about it. Now let's actually switch to Ukraine. So there was um, large scale attack um, on the night between 9th and 10th of February. There were many um, uh, power generation assets hit in Ukraine. So there were hits in Kiev. There were hits. There's thermal power generator here near Kryvyi Rih. There's also some attacks in Khmelnytsky, Lviv, Odessa. So basically, it was pretty widespread. There were also attacks in their sort of near rear, in very heavy attacks in Zaporizhya, one of the heaviest since the beginning of the war. Also in Kharkiv and Dnipro. Uh, so it could be this whole kind of like one big attack, probably better viewed as two separate attacks. One is attack against the power generation and distribution systems, where actually there is actually a very clear shift by the Russian military, where they starting going after actually power generators. If you remember in past, I said that they are mostly attacking power distribution network. Now they apparently seeing that West is helping with some transformers or whatever the spare parts, so that the system still kind of like functions and doesn't collapse. So they decided to, okay, let's just now attack power generators because that's much more deeper permanent damage. You really cannot replace it or fix it or patch it very easily at all. So there's that component, but at the same time, there were also attacks against the power grid. So it's kind of like mixed, but there's a clear shift in the direction of power generators being attacked. The other actually part of it is this really attack against their sort of near rear, or I would say not near rear, but well, I guess it's actually um, let's say long distance rear of Ukrainian troops. So basically, these three cities, Kharkiv, Dnipro, Zaporizhia, kind of like create a logistical backbone and line for Ukrainian troops here uh, on the main front line. And this might be actually indication of this upcoming offensives that everybody is talking about right now. That basically they attacking the logistical sort of hubs and everything, in whatever they deem is necessary to attack in preparation of the offensive. So this might be actually a sign of the impending offensive. And by the way, there are actually rumors, which is really surprises me, is that the offensive is actually going to happen against Kharkiv. So the idea is going to be to capture Kharkiv. So it's going to happen apparently out of this corner So you can see which is between Sumy region and Kharkiv region, with the idea of essentially encircling and basically capturing Kharkiv. This is just a rumor, but it is, if this is true, this is very um, important, and so on. And you know, uh, without knowing what resources Russian side has there, it's really hard to say, yeah, this is could be successful, could not. Uh, in the past, they were not successful, and there is, significant like defensive lines here around Kharkiv. So it for sure is not going to be easy. Uh, but the question is of what resources Russian side has there, and also similar situation on Ukrainian side, because there is obviously not as many resources right now defending Kharkiv. So basically, there's too many unknowns in the equation to say something. If this happens, we'll find out, and I'll discuss it. But right now, this is sort of on the level of rumors. Let's put it this way. But it is potentially extremely important information, so I'm sharing that. And now let's actually a little bit about strategic situation in military, yeah, military strategic situation in Ukraine. So at this point, in terms of people willingness to fight, is Ukraine is really getting into a difficult situation. What's happening is that initially you had a lot of people who are like were just volunteers willing to go and fight, join the military, and that's what's been happening since the beginning of the war. And all of those people at this point are essentially already in the army. So there's no more sort of volunteers or people who really want to, go defend and fight and so on. And that's why I said that it was very unwise and criminal for Ukrainian top to actually allow um, to basically to waste these people, to waste their lives by simply plugging holes on the front line with their bodies instead of actually, having intelligent military decisions and trying to use equipment wisely. So it wasn't done. They were sort of largely wasted, and so now there's a situation when there's next sort of whoever like remained in Ukraine, they don't want to fight. So this conscription service in Ukraine gets to the point that they trying to capture peoples on the street, and yes, they do capture people on the street, but the problem is these people will not fight. They will just surrender at the first threat. Um, and I would say this that it's not that I'm not blaming the people. By the way, if you think that I'm blaming people, I'm not blaming people. These people are just much more practical, and they look at the situation, what's in it for me, and they seeing that there's nothing in it for them except the opportunity to die, and they're making very rational decision. I'm going to surrender, and uh, the way this is in a way like, well, not in a way, it is political problem where they see absolutely corrupt Ukrainian top, and they see that they realize that the country is not going to change. Let's say Ukraine wins the war tomorrow, they realize that the country is not going to change. Things will continue the way they were, which is extremely corrupt. There is no future for most people. Don't see their future in Ukraine because of that, and the corruption is really a symptom. I'll probably will talk about it later. But the way they see it from sort of like regular person who really doesn't analyze, they're like, okay, we have this corruption where the top just loots the country, and we'll just have to pay with our lives, and so they choose not to do that, and you cannot really blame them for that. I think it's very logical choice, because they see it as they are, in a way, from their perspective, is no difference between Russia and current Ukrainian political top, right? It's just one kind of looter will be changed for another kind of looter. Maybe the other one is more brutal and so on, but largely that's the perspective of this kind of people, right? How they see it. And so going back to all of this, why it's important is because at this point, this is what I said before, uh, the backbone or people who are really willing to fight because they believe this is right and sort of in a way kind of like ideological fighters, there are fewer and fewer of them. And once you get to some critical level, and there is no science on it, I don't know, I cannot tell you. Let's say it's obviously never a lot, but it's 10, 15% of the unit. Once it gets to let's say 5 to 3%, then the unit just basically is not really not really capable of fighting. Let's put it this way. At the sort of any kind of like first sign of any real danger, it just basically disintegrates, and most people surrender or run away or so on. And so that's why we probably this Ukrainian political top seeing this internally as insiders, they see that, and that's why they passed this law that I mentioned that essentially criminalizes relationship between the soldier and the military top, where basically you go to jail by refusing to do anything, to do whatever you asked to do, which is not how Ukrainian society functions, um, and Ukrainian army functions, because it's always about like, okay, it makes sense, I'm gonna do it, or I believe, it's important, I'm gonna do it. It's never was, oh, you're gonna go to jail, that's why you're gonna do it. And from that perspective, that's another sign that this is turning into the country nobody wants, right? From you, I'm talking about from Ukrainian, average Ukrainian perspective, right? It's turning into something that's more similar to Russia, and then that further undermines desire to fight for system like that, because in the first place people fighting against Russia not to be in a system like that. But if you have the system like that, then okay, what's the point of fighting? So as you can see, this is very that's why that law was extremely bad for Ukraine. And again, goes back to the point is that this incompetent political and military leadership will ensure um, that Ukraine is not able to defend itself. And by the way, this is something like that was happening in South Vietnam, and that's why South Vietnam was not viable in the end when they were fighting North Vietnam. So again, this is potentially slowly but surely turning Ukraine, all of this incompetence, that it may turn Ukraine into the South Vietnam, how it was there. Um, because Russian side, they have, it's a war of attrition and they fully aware of it. Their goal is to basically grind grind people. They know that they have larger sources of people, more than Ukraine, and inflicting losses. They understand over time inflicting these losses will collapse Ukraine from within. So they they may not be good at sort of many things, but I would say there is one thing that's sort of important to understand about the Russian side is they fairly good in strategy, and so in some ways maybe even better than the West. Well, I would say at least during the Soviet times, they in many ways they were better. I would say yes, they were fighting for the, I would say, from the position that was from the beginning like losing position. You're gonna lose in it because communism doesn't work, and you're gonna lose no matter what. It's just the question of time. So, but at the same time, they played this, in a way, terrible strategic position, they squeezed the maximum out of it. And so, because the fact that the Soviet Union lived 70 years instead of, like, let's say 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years, is kind of like testament to the strategic abilities. Let's put it this way. Um, so again, the strategy wise, um, Russia, took the right strategy for themselves. Their population is fairly insensitive to the losses and just generally conditioned to do what they told. And that's actually, by the way, problem of the West, because that's very similar things are being sort of implemented in the West, where there's a lot of population is conditioned to do what they told. And in this way, it's also, again, that's when I said that West is losing itself. Is This is exactly that. And But going back to Russia, so as long as there's something to eat, and there is as long as there is a supply of all of those consumer goods from China, and then whatever else you can get through Turkey, other sources like Malaysia, uh, um, they're gonna be okay. Russia is gonna be okay. They're not gonna collapse tomorrow. So so that's the situation. So basically, the takeaway is that um, current Ukrainian leadership led Ukraine into a very difficult strategic situation, and I would say strategically it's a dead end right now. Um, and and in a way, with this leadership, this is just going to be this will go to bitter end. That's, I would say, how I look at the situation right now there. Okay, now let's actually do walks through the front line. So the situation along the state border, I would say, based on those rumors, is very concerning. Specifically about the Kharkiv, and I mentioned before that there was a lot of artillery shelling in the Sumy region, so it all kind of a little bit supports that rumor. So we'll see what happens, but the situation is definitely nothing like it used to be before. Situation is dangerous, and there is a potential for Russian offensive somewhere in this area, not clear where. Now let's move to the North Luhansk front line. Things here are, I would say, more or less the same. Some Russian attacks here in the very south, where they try to destroy these Ukrainian bridgeheads without much really success so far. Things are in balance, but again, there is this huge, I would say, part of the iceberg that we're not seeing. And where that thing is gonna sort of pop up, whether it's gonna be Kharkiv or it could be here, or it could be Zaporizhya region, is unknown. And unfortunately, I don't have access to satellites to kind of analyze the data. But there is that huge piece of iceberg that's, or submarine that's floating around and ready to kind of like sort of show up. Um, Now let's look at North Donbass front line, where things really going pretty bad for Ukrainian side. So as you can see, the Wagner mercenaries now totally focused on moving, achieving something north of Bakhmut, and then I'll show you then south. Again, unconfirmed information that they reached this road. Well, it's actually, call it autobahn, highway, motorway, whatever you call it. I'm not sure, whatever language, but hopefully I explained what it is. It's called E40. So it kind of connects actually. It goes from the west of Ukraine, from the border with Poland, to all the way to Volgograd, or in Russia, or more known as Stalingrad. So that's the road. So it's really a major road artery. Um, but the point is that there are rumors that they reached this road, which here, from this perspective, it connects Bakhmut and Slavyansk. Obviously, it's no longer usable in the past anyway, so it's not like, but it's more like a yardstick where they are in terms of outflanking Bakhmut. So there are rumors that they actually even crossed. Basically there is a ridge. It's not very visible here. So apparently they attacked using that ridge, and then they crossed it, and there is sort of another ridge here. Don't Unfortunately, again, it's at the level of the rumors, so cannot confirm that. But as you can, if that's true, that's extremely bad development. As you can imagine, there's no question about that. And that really puts this two kind of like strongholds and villages, Paraskovivka and Krasna Hora. Essentially, they need to be evacuated, and if we see that in next coming days, then this is all true. And then the next sort of stronghold is going to be this village Berhivka, which at that point it really makes this road Chromove, Chasiv Yar, it basically usable, but at very risky, and basically your throughput will diminish because a lot of the trucks are going to be destroyed as they pass through that road. So again, potentially pretty bad development. We'll see if that's actually, if this is at the level of the rumor or actually true. Then this is just the older map that I shown. So Berkhevka is here. So this is this road E40 here. It's called M03, and then local name T0513. So basically it kind of goes up there. So based on those information, that Russian troops managed to actually get to it and really just get over it. Which again, you can see that this is this road through Chromova. You see, this is where this road is, and I don't know, it's about 5 kilometers, maybe 6 kilometers to the Russian troops. But even here, Ivanivsky, where Russian troops are attacking, it's even less. So as you can imagine, it's probably what, like, I don't know, 4 kilometers or something like that, plus minus. So at this point, I would say it's already right now the supply of Ukrainian troops in Bakhmut is becoming tighter. It's at the very early stages of sort of cutting oxygen, but I would say the process has started, and the way it looks, it's probably gonna just intensify. Um, so this is the sort of including the southern parts. So if so, the whole point is, if Russian troops are here, right, and they're here, so essentially it's almost that this, if that's true, that's almost leaves you with a situation you need to start withdrawing right now, or it might be later, too late, or you may have extremely massive withdrawal where you're going to have heavy losses during the withdrawal. So cannot say for now at this point for sure, but if that's true, that really is sort of very bad sign. That's all I can say. Oh, and then another sort of not a very important news, but I just want to mention this, that Russian military started integrating this former DNR and LNR troop into regular Russian army. So this brigades, DNR brigades, will sort of now changing to the sort of regular Russian um, army unit numbering system. So, like for example, this third brigade was renamed 132nd. And I don't know the rest of them. Probably will be renamed in some other ways. Meaning some other numbers in the Russian army system. Um, Now let's look at what's going on at the central Donbass, and here situation is more or less actually quiet, which is another sign of this potential offensive. Sorry, this was actually my mistake here that I didn't remove the air. So things here are more or less quiet again, as I said, and that could be a sign of this impending attack or offensive, whatever you call it. And then Zaporizhia front line is also quiet. So that's a situation. So again, we'll see where the attack is going to happen. It's not going to be wide front attack, as I said. I don't think the Russia has resources for that. So this will be much more local operation. As I said, there are rumors that they may attack Kharkiv, could be here, North Luhansk, could be Zaporizhia. I don't think it's going to be either North Donbass or Central Donbass. Just things are already kind of like moving in the calling right direction on the North Donbass, anyways. And Central is just going to be super hard to get through. So again, we'll find out. It's probably not going to be far away. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and until next time. Bye bye.